Ted again, Discover Your Money Temperament. We've covered in part one why you're not good with money, because you're human, your belief set and environment where you learned about money and your culture. And then in part two, we got into money values, what is most important about money to you. And then we got introduced the concept of money temperament, which I think is the most important, or money values and money temperament are the most important. But on a daily basis, you need to understand and manage your money values. The next part of the money behavior system is money knowledge. Money knowledge is not what you probably think it is when I hear the terms money knowledge. Money knowledge to most people is, what do I know about economics, and what do I know about finance, and how do I, balance a checkbook and do taxes? Okay, that's part of it, but that's technical knowledge. I'm talking about a deeper set of knowledge of how you process information. Again, I'm back to your feeling, thinking brain. All of us take in information differently. You are constantly being bombarded with billions of bits of information, and your non-conscious brain is able to take that in and sort it out. It's not always perfect. We have this what's called associative brain, and it sticks it all over the place and it recalls it when necessary. And then our thinking brain can take in about 40 billion bits of information at a time, and it's much more deliberate. But when I talk about money knowledge, it's how do you process information? In the performance industry, or in the performance area that I deal with, it's called learning modality. Okay, I've got another site called Pathfinder Coaches where we build training systems and training platforms and the like. And I have one of the courses for this book on that site. Again, Pathfinder Coaches. But one of the things we do there all the time is we realize and we know that people learn differently, that we process information uniquely. And the standards are you a visual learner? Do you like looking at pictures? Do you like looking at images? Are you a person that takes most of your time to draw on information through your eyes? And interesting, as humans, that is a dominant, often the default for a lot of people. Our brain, the way it's structured, the whole visual portion of the brain that processes visual images, because as humans, that's one of our most significant survival tools, is seeing. Now, here's another little bit of a pro tip. A lot of you may realize that you actually have a hole in your eye. It is a blind spot, and it has to do with the structure of the eye, that you don't really see everything. So what you see in the world is a construct. It's not reality. It's the way your brain takes images and they hit the cones of your eye and they're restructured and they go back into your brain and they go back to that associative brain and they take past images and they bring it together and they build a picture of what is going on. So the first thing is, do you prefer to learn through pictures? Now, this is important in money, particularly if you're dealing with a financial professional. If you're dealing with a financial professional, you need to sit down and demand that you're given graphs and pictures and visual representations of what is going on. Now, I'm not saying pretty pictures of people walking around the beach and that ubiquitous 60-something guy that is in perfect shape and worth $1 gazillion on a sailboat someplace in the Pacific. What I'm talking about is the way you take in information to allow you to take a decision based on what you're going to spend your money on. That's different. Okay, so first is eyes. Next is auditory. Do you like to hear things? Are you the type of person that your default is, tell me, and you use words like, I'm listening, I can hear it, I hear what you're saying? Our school system is generally set up for the auditory listener. It's information, a one-way flow. It's a lecture. A lecture is set up for auditory, and if you're lucky, your professor or teacher also throws in some visuals for the visual learner. But are you an auditory learner? Is that the way you like to take in your information? So if you're working with a professional, you need to demand that they take the time to explain to you what's going on, to explain what the ramifications are. Yeah, the graphs and arrows and all that stuff are meaningless to you. Tell me, speak to me, look into my face and tell me what I want to hear because I need to hear it. That's an auditory learner. Then you've got to sit down and say, okay, there's olfactory. We smell things. We process information through our noses. Are there smells that alert you in different circumstances that take you back and you spend because of those smells? Is there a reason that every mall in America has a food court and every food court has somebody making pretzels and every one of those pretzels has a smell that does something in your brain that makes you spend? Is there a reason that realtors are told to have an apple pie out? Is there a reason that you have a certain feeling at Christmas? Because our brains are set up in such a way that we take in information and we process that information in such a way that it impacts us emotionally and causes us to do something. Then, are you kinesthetic? Kinesthetic simply means, are you the type of person who has to touch it? Before you buy that car, you have to drive it. You need to crawl over it. You need to feel it. It feels good. And when you're talking to people, is, man, this feels great. Hand that to me. I want to feel it. As opposed to, yeah, that looks good. Yeah, I hear you. No, that feels good. Feels good. Kinesthetic is there are certain circumstances, and this is difficult if you're dealing with products and services that are not tangible. So you give the client the information. And if you're a kinesthetic learner with money knowledge, you need to be in a position that, give me the stuff. I need to feel it. I need to take a look at it. That's how you process information. And then finally, are you the type of person that I call it auditory digital? Now, this is based on some work done by a good friend of mine and a super psychologist, Faye Hargrove. She wrote this program, and it's all covered in the book. But basically, if you're a person that is digitally oriented, you're a numbers person. You got to see the data. Don't borrow me. I know what hey, get off, don't show me the pretty pictures and quick yakking at me and, hey, take the puppy back. Show me the data. I need the spreadsheet. Well, here's the problem you have to take into consideration. We use all of this when we process information. Every day, unless you have an impairment with your senses, we are sensory sponges. We're constantly interacting with our environment. And our feeling brain is in charge. And automatically we are looking at the sights and the sounds and listening to the sounds, and we're smelling the fragrances and we're touching what has happened. So when you go into a store, there's a reason it smells the way it is and the way it's lighted the way it is and the music that is going through the store. And there's a reason why classical music has a certain connotation for class and expensive. It's by design. And it's gotten so sophisticated today that it's based on the colors that are chosen and the experience of dropping $500,000 on a Porsche. Because a Porsche is a Porsche is a Porsche, it is transportation. However, the buying experience, keep that in mind. Very few of us are the digitals. These are engineers, these are math people, and incidentally, the financial planning profession. Most financial planners have a strong propensity for the numbers. And ironically, they're working with people that don't. So be very careful when you're working with a professional that you also understand how they process information, because their money knowledge will bias how they present information and how they assume you assimilate information. So here's a pro tip. Once you're talking to a financial pro, and I say a financial pro is anybody that's got a license to sell you anything, or you're in a situation that you're going to be spending money on something significant that is consequential, keep all your senses open to the environment you're in. What are they doing to conspire against you to make your feeling brain take charge and cause you to spend money that you don't want to spend on things you really don't need? Also, become a people watcher with regard to the person who is servicing you. The words they're using, the images and the sales material they're showing you. Is this person by default a visual person, a numbers person, a hearing person? Because they will by default present information that makes sense to them, but it may not make sense to you. So how do you get around this? Try to do everything in a way that it accommodates all your senses. Visual, show a picture; auditory, talk about it; tactile, feel it. Here's the data to support it. Then once you determine what is your preference, you will focus on that, but use the other sensory tools that you have at your disposal to reinforce and support your decision making. We are emotional animals. We rely on our senses in every spending decision. Don't put yourself in a position that you start spending money because your senses are tripping you up. You have a preferred way of processing information. That should be the way you do your research. That should be the way people work with you when you're buying something. Money knowledge. It's much deeper than when you thought it was. Okay, I'll be back in a couple minutes. We'll go on to the next chapter.